Did you know you can make beads from these? Hi there, welcome to the Upcycled Design Lab. If you're new here, my name's Cindy and I craft using recycled and repurposed materials to give you ideas on ways to make and create more economically and ecologically. And today I'm going to share with you one of my favorite ways to upcycle aluminum cans. These cans make all sorts of pretty beads that can be used to make jewelry and other fun projects. So let me show you how easy it is to upcycle your empty drink cans into pretty metal beads. For this project, you're going to need your aluminum cans, and you want to flatten the aluminum can. So you're going to break down the can, taking off the top and the bottom, and then flattening the cans into these metal sheets. I'm not going to go over that process right now because I've done a couple of in-depth tutorials. One of them is how I break my aluminum cans down into 4 usable parts. And then I have a video on 3 different methods for flattening the aluminum can into sheets. So I will put links to those in the description. But for this video, we're going to just be starting with the aluminum sheets already in the flattened state. You're also going to need a pair of scissors, a small wooden skewer, and either some metal tape or some packing tape with some wax type paper. And we'll go over the differences in these 2 tapes in a little bit. You're going to want some sort of sealer. I just have this Mod Podge high gloss, but you could use regular Mod Podge. I do suggest using a sealer that has some adhesive in it as well, and not just a straight sealer, because it will help to hold the beads. And then you need some way to put the sealer on and let them dry. So I just have some toothpicks here that I put my beads on, and then I stick them into this rice so that they'll stand up and dry. But a piece of styrofoam, anything like that would work as well. If you want to add some color to the beads, you're going to want some alcohol inks in some different colors. And then you also need some glue sticks. You're also going to need a bead template, and while there are many other bead shapes, these 3 particular beads and their templates are available on my blog, and I will put a link to that in the description as well. The last thing you're going to need is this green creativity bead roller, and it's available on Amazon for around $12, so it's very affordable. And as far as I know, it's the only bead roller that will work with aluminum cans because it helps you to hold the bead onto the roller, and it just helps when you're working with a stiffer material than regular paper. So I'll put a link to this in the description as well. If you know of other bead rollers and you roll a lot of beads, let me know. I'd love to know if there were other ones out there available that would work for aluminum cans. But like I said, as far as I know, this is the only one that really helps you hold the aluminum while you're rolling the bead, and it assists in working with the stiffer material. There are a couple of different ways to cut the beads, and the first way is that you can use a Cricut cutting machine. If you have a Cricut cutting machine, there are SVG files linked on my blog as well. And I've also have a tutorial on how to cut aluminum cans on a Cricut cutting machine. If you're interested in that, the link will be in the description. But I know a lot of people don't have a Cricut cutting machine, and these beads are very easy to also cut by hand. So that's what I'm going to demonstrate today. So in order to cut the beads by hand, all you need is your paper template, a glue stick, your flattened aluminum sheet, and a pair of scissors. And the template that I'm starting with is what I call my kind of oblong beads. So I'm going to be rolling this type of bead. The first thing I want to do is just cut down my template. And then I want to just use a little bit of glue to glue the paper to my aluminum sheet. I like to use the glue stick instead of tape because it just does a better job of holding the paper onto the aluminum while you're cutting the pieces. So once you have your paper attached to the metal, you can trim off the excess aluminum and carefully cut your beads along the lines of the template. So this is what your piece should look like, and the paper should just come right off. If it doesn't, you can use a little bit of water and get the paper off, but you should just have a big long triangle shape when you're done. Before I roll the bead, I want to make sure that I have something to secure the end, and that's where I'm going to use my metal tape. So I just want to cut another triangular piece that will fit on the tip here and come to a point, and I want it to be long enough to wrap around the bead at least 2 times. So usually 2 inches is about enough to do that. So I'm just going to cut another triangular shaped piece. And I want the fat end to kind of match up with the skinny end of my aluminum piece. And this metal tape has paper backing on it, which makes it very easy to use. So I'm just going to peel back a little bit of the tape or the backing. And I'm going to attach the tape to the silver side or unprinted side of my aluminum. If you want to roll the bead the opposite direction, you're going to put the tape on the other side, but we'll go over that in a minute. And then the next thing I want to do is I'm going to take my metal skewer and just start a little bit of a coil at the fat end of my bead. And then I want to just tighten it up with my fingers so that it'll stay securely on the bead roller. And this bead roller has 2 little metal barrels on it. I'm going to slide my coil between the 2 barrels. And then there's also a sort of a little bit of a lever on here, and that's what helps you when you're working with a stiffer material like the aluminum. So I just usually kind of guide the bead with my finger, let the pressure apply from the little green lever, and turn the handle. Now when you first start out, you might find that the coils are kind of loose, and you can pull on the bead gently to tighten it. And you might want to straighten it out here and there so that it coils evenly from side to side. This one wants to go off the bead roller a little bit. When you get to the tape area, you can remove the paper and just continue rolling the tape all the way around to secure the bead. And when you're ready, you just press down on the pressure lever and pull your bead off the bead roller. And it's really a very simple process, and I just think it gives you a fun metal bead that has a very different look than if you were rolling a paper bead. I'm planning to use this particular bead to make some fringe for a trash fashion wedding dress that I'm making, and if you're interested in following that project, you can find the link to that in the description as well. To make these cylinder beads, I'm using exactly the same process. The only difference is that I cut my tape in a straight shape because I want the tape to match the shape of my bead. The size of the aluminum cans works well for the small beads like the oblong bead and the cylinder bead, but sometimes you want to make larger beads like I did for the head of this little ant plant charm project that I made. So for this project I used the cylinder beads for the body, and then I have a larger oblong bead that I made for the head. To make this larger bead, you need 3 templates and 3 sheets of aluminum. And I've gone ahead and I've pre-cut all of my pieces. So when you're finished, you'll have 3 separate sizes of aluminum can that fit together in one long tapered piece. And I'm going to use my metal tape again just to tape the pieces together. I have a couple scraps here that I'm just going to cut up. You want a fairly long piece. I'm going to be rolling this with the aluminum side out, so I want to put the tape on the aluminum side. And I'm just going to cut some pieces, tape them together. If there's too much tape, you can trim them off. If your pieces don't match up perfectly, you can also trim the aluminum down a little bit just to make the edges smoother. And then you're going to add a piece of tape to the tip again and roll the bead in exactly the same fashion as the smaller beads. One thing I will mention is that the 3 cans in length is about the max that this bead roller can handle, because you can see this little pressure level is pushed all the way down, and so it's a little harder to release the bigger beads from the bead roller, but you can roll up to 3 cans in length to make a bigger bead. So as I mentioned, I like to add alcohol ink to color my beads, but before I do that, I want to be sure to seal the beads, because I've had the occasion where the alcohol ink causes the tape to fail and then the bead will pop open. So I'm putting my beads on a toothpick and then brushing on a light coat of my Mod Podge and putting them in my container to dry. So I'm going to allow the sealer to dry on these beads, and I have a set of beads here that I've already sealed. So to color the beads, I'm just going to take a few beads in a small container and add a few drops of alcohol ink. And then I'll just shake the beads around until they're covered with the color. You can keep adding more color and shaking the beads until they're coated with as much color as you want, and then you just need to let them dry. And you're also going to want to add another sealing coat on top of the alcohol ink. So you can use a regular sealer, or you can just use another coat of the Mod Podge. As I mentioned, I've mostly rolled the beads with the silver side out and then added color with my alcohol inks, but sometimes it's fun to have the printed side out, so you don't want to use the metal tape, otherwise that'll cover up your print. And if you want to do that, you can use clear packing tape, but you want to add some backing to it so that you can work with it more easily. And for my backing, I'm just using some leftover backing from contact paper. You could probably also use wax paper or the sheets left from stickers that you put through your printer, something like that, where you can put the tape on and still peel it off pretty easily. So once you've done that, you can cut the packing tape the same way that you cut the metal tape and assemble the beads in a similar fashion. You just want to make sure that you're putting the tape on the printed side and rolling the beads the opposite direction. A couple of things about the two different types of tape. The metal tape is very tacky and it's kind of moldable because it's made from metal, which makes it a little more suitable for working with the aluminum cans. But as I mentioned, if you want to use the printed side, you don't want to cover it up. So the plastic tape will work, even though it's not quite as sticky. It does peel off of the aluminum much easier, and it doesn't hold the shape of the bead. It wants to hold its shape a little bit more. So I'm actually using Dollar Tree packing tape, really thin, kind of cheap packing tape. And I would recommend using a thinner tape, because the thicker the tape is, the more it's going to want to hold its own shape. You definitely want to use a glue type of sealing coat on top of the packing tape, because while the tape does hold, it will pull off of the aluminum. So both techniques will work, but you just need to know that there are some differences in the tape, and the metal tape in a lot of ways is just a little bit more suitable to work with the aluminum. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial on how to make beads from aluminum cans. If you have any questions, if I didn't cover something clearly, feel free to ask me a question in the comments. Don't forget to check all of the extra resources you can find in the description. I hope you found some inspiration here. If you did, I hope you'll give this video a like. Also, if you haven't already, I'd love to have you join my YouTube family by clicking that subscribe button. As I mentioned, there are lots more resources available. You can find out more by clicking or tapping your screen now. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you back here soon in the lab for my next experiment.